First of all, I would like to thank everyone so much for joining us today for Everyone's Responsibility, discussing the role male allies play in preventing female genital cutting. I'm Catherine Cox, a program intern at Sahiyo, and I'm so honored to be joined today by our expert panelists, Jeremiah Kipainoi, Khadijah Abdullah, Tony Mwebia, Hatim Amiji, moderated by Murtaza Kapasi and Maria Taher. All of them have been working in the field of FGC prevention, encouraging men to become active and empowering communities to abandon FGC. Female genital cutting includes the total or partial removal of the external female genitalia for non-medical reasons. Along with being a human rights violation, female genital cutting is an extreme form of gender-based violence. The gendered nature of FGC calls for all men to take a role in its abandonment, yet far too often, men choose to stay silent on the matter or simply don't know about it at all. Our webinar today will focus on the role male allies play in prevention efforts towards ending female genital cutting. So our event today is going to start with a quick introduction of the work Sahiyo has done, as well as of the work our panelists have done in this field. Following that, we will lead a short Q&A session with our panelists. And after the formal Q&A, our panelists will be taking audience questions. So if you have a question for our panelists, please feel free to ask it in the Q&A box, making sure that you do not select anonymous, and we will be allowing a few participants to come live and ask their questions at the end of the webinar. So today we're joined by Maria Taher, one of Sahiyo's co-founders, who has graciously joined us to help moderate the webinar. Maria Taher has worked in the field of gender-based violence prevention for over 10 years, and she is one of the 5 co-founders of Sahiyo. She is a strong believer in the power storytelling has to create change. And without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Maria, and she can help introduce some of Sahiyo's work.
Great. Thank you so much, Kate. And thank you all for registering and attending our webinar today. We're really excited to see you. And we're really excited to talk about the need for male allyship and to introduce you to our program bio as well. For those who are not aware of Sahiyo, we're an organization with the mission to empower Asian and other communities to end female genital cutting and create positive social change through dialogue, education, and a collaboration based on community involvement. And we do this through a variety of programming that really emphasizes the use of storytelling, from writing on our blog to taking part in our digital story workshops to education and outreach and creating safe spaces where people can talk about their experiences. One such program that we've done is our Voices to End FGMC project, which is a digital storytelling project that works to create a critical mass of voices speaking out against this issue. And it is a digital storytelling project which brings together advocates and those connected to FGMC throughout the world to really connect, but also to create 2 to 3 minute short videos that they can use for advocacy purposes and educational purposes as well. And you will get a chance to see one of those videos in just a few minutes, as one of our speakers, Hatim, was the first male to take part in that workshop. So we're really thankful that he's here, and we're thankful that all of our speakers are here. So if we could just go to the next slide. And now it's my pleasure to introduce you to Murtaza Kapasi, who is the project lead of BIO. And Murtaza is currently an assistant director of admissions at Long Island University, and his passion originates from a variety of disciplines. After studying geology, theater, and poverty at Washington Lee University, Murtaza has continued to question humanity's relationship to the earth, exploring the culture and entertainment created as a result. To unwind, Murtaza enjoys a little bit of everything, and he's a lifelong learner and child at heart. I'm really happy to have him help support and get BIO off the ground. And so Murtaza, thank you for being our moderator today.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thanks for having me, of course, and happy to be here to speak about such an important issue. A little bit about BIO and the idea of BIO. It was kind of formed to be a support system, first of all, for people who have, gone through this horrific act, as well as, be a source of resource for men to come and educate themselves about the topic so they can have those difficult conversations, difficult but necessary conversations. We are we work with obviously some very talented people here. And so, I mean, including our panelists who are international from Kenya, who are doing a lot of like the important groundwork that really needs to be happening that doesn't get seen, but are, telling people's stories on that end. And bio is, open to everyone. It's not just for men, but it's primarily for men and to raise that education and awareness of the issue. And so with that, I'd like to go into introducing our panelists, our wonderful panelists. We have Hatim Amiji, who is, like Marta said, was one of the first participants, male participants to come and tell his stories. And he did that through a project called the Voices to End FGMC. And his video is a phenomenal video, and the way he tells the story about his experience with his sisters, if you watch that, in essence, you'll understand, excuse me, why bio is so important in that sense. And for men to realize that that's happened is, first of all, really intimate and really difficult thing to go through, but you should have support in that, within that. And to do that, you need to have those male allies. Another of our panelists is going to be Khadijah Abdullah. Khadijah is working in public health services, doing amazing research, and comes with a wide array of experience and perspective on this issue. We're really happy to have her here and speak about her experience. Tony Mwebia is joining us from Kenya and has done a lot of work in the area. He comes from over 10 years of experience in the field and has done, like I said, a lot of that groundwork, which, it can get lost in translation if you're not, around it per se. Finally, we have Jeremiah Kipainoi. I don't know if we've been able to get in touch with him, but I think he might have joined us. But yeah, Jeremiah is also doing a lot of the work abroad, and we're happy to be able to connect with him and be able to share our stories, share our experiences. And the goal of this panel is, to really kind of see what is, what are we missing, what are they missing, and how can we help each other, and also come together as allies for the overall cause to end FGM-FGC. So I did want to, come back to Hatim's video here and play that video so we can watch that together and kind of give you a sense, because I think in essence it really does sum up the mission that we all have together.
Of course. So I can go ahead and play that video now. Please tell me if you can't hear the audio.
My sister and I played a lot together as kids. Both of us loved Play-Doh. We probably had more than 20 different colors, and we would play in a room for hours, making all kinds of different foods, imaginary characters, and random shapes. I was older than her, and I remember our mom always saying, "Make sure your sister doesn't eat it." I took great pride in the fact that mom gave me so much responsibility, and I did my best to protect my sister whenever she brought a chunk of dough towards her mouth. I never got mad. I would just tell her, no, don't do that, and ask her to make me something as a distraction. As we grew up, we also grew apart, until we were practically strangers. Then, in preparation for a school fellowship, I learned about the practice of FGMC because it occurs in Uganda where I was placed. I was so shocked when I found out that it still happens in some communities around the globe, including the one my sister and I were raised in. My mom told me that my sister had been cut, but I was too afraid to ask her about it. Finally, I decided to call her from my walled-off compound in Uganda. She told me her story in all its detail. I was at a loss for words. After we got off the phone, I just sat in my room and cried. It was a hard conversation, but somehow, me asking her and her being honest with me brought us back together. I feel like we can start to be brother and sister again.
Thanks, Kate, and Oh, go ahead, Kate.
I was just going to say thank you so much, Hatim, for joining us. It's quite a powerful video, so thank you so much.
Okay, and so, I mean, from this point on, it's kind of the meat and bones of the event. And so I wanted to move into some questions. And we have some questions, for specific panelists and more for, groups. And so the first question is actually kind of a follow-up to Hatim's video. And so telling a story is, difficult in itself. The subject matter is difficult in itself. Why did you want to do it? What was that like moment of inspiration, and what made you, like, inspired you to finally tell that story? What was that pushing point?
It's a great question. I think there's like a lot of things that went into, the push for me to try and get more involved in it. But I think, like, to sum it up, like one of the main reasons was, I feel like I would have learned more about the issue by, immersing myself with people who have actually gone through it, right? Like, I can only read so much about it through the literature. I can only watch so many videos about it, but like to actually like be around, women who have gone through it and are, expressing, their feelings about what happened to them and expressing the experience that they went through. I think that was the way in which I really like learned more about, what this issue does to people, and what this practice, does to people. So that was, I guess in a way kind of selfish of me to try and learn it in a way where I'm entering space that, isn't traditionally for me, but I think it definitely opened my eyes up more to, what exactly is happening. And I think that's really why.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you say you felt you selfish, and I felt similarly, and so I get that. And it's like you're trying to learn about something, but then it's such a touchy subject, you don't want to be intrusive, and so it comes with a degree of like, you have to treat it carefully, and so that's just something to think about. And I think that's something that I found really interesting. Kind of just a follow-up question, and this is to everyone. So I guess we all learn about it or have learned about it at different ages. It happens to people and they learn about it. And so when did you first learn about FGC, FGM, and how old were you? What was your experience? And so this is for everyone. Khadijah, Jeremiah, Tony, feel free to jump in here, and love to hear what you have to say.
I guess since I'm already unmuted, I can go first.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the video I mentioned, I learned about it like in university. So I guess I was like 21 years old. And that, I think that was like really shocking that it's something so prevalent in a community that I grew up in, but I learned about it from an outside source. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I learned it from.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is Jeremiah. I learned about FGM pretty much when, I was just very young, and we used to have ceremonies that used to happen. We just, of course, went to eat food because it's a ceremony. For us, it's just like a wedding, or at that point, so everyone went to celebrate. So pretty much at a very young age. I don't remember exactly when, but I was just born in that context.
Well, for me, I learned about FGM after the university. So I went to do some volunteer work with urban refugees in Nairobi. And here I am sitting down with some refugees men from Somali, and they're sharing their experiences about FGM because the whole project was about FGM. And that's when I realized that it's something that is harmful, though I had heard people talk about it while I was at the university as an harmful cultural practice. I never taken keen interest on the same. I also happen to come from a community which has a prevalence of FGM at around 31%, among the 5th highest in Kenya, but the family I come from, we never practiced the same, so I had not taken keen interest on the same.
Thank you, Tony.
I learned about FGM/C in my 20s. I partnered with GW here in DC we focus on doing a toolkit for survivors and healthcare providers on FGM/C. And I found out many of my friends had undergone this practice. And it really opened my eyes to some of the long-term effects they have to go through the rest of their lives due to FGM/C. Some of them have children now, and just the horror of having to be cut open again to give birth. And we interviewed many survivors and got their stories. And we also interviewed providers who are doctors, because many of them don't even have the experience or the background to care for these women, or they've never seen it before, and they made faces. And then these women don't go back to the doctor because, like, she gave me this face. I feel like, I feel like I'm not welcome here. I feel like they don't understand what's going on with my body. And, as I mentioned later, we kind of learned that we also need to involve men. Men are very, very important to talk about this topic. And like, Hatim is talking about it and his sister's experience and how he's feeling about it. And I think it's important that more men kind of speak up about this and join this, because they can be an ally to prevent this from happening to women and girls.
100%. And like, one thing I want to stress on that, you mentioned, Khadijah, is that you're doing a lot of the research that needs to be done to actually understand this and to be presented for things to change. And that's a very important aspect of, this movement, is recognizing that to be able to, talk about this, we have to be able to research it and better understand it as well. So the next question I have here is going to be kind of first, a little bit more on, for a little bit for everyone, but I kind of want to hear from Khadijah first, if possible. And so it's the kind of the overall topic of, why do you believe that men should be involved and have to be involved for this change? And so if we can start with your point of view first, and then we can kind of work backwards in order that we just answered, that would be great.
Sure. I think a lot of times when survivors we talk to, a lot of times, it happens because sometimes a leader in their family has said something that must be done. And a lot of times the dads the men don't even really are aware of it. And I think that if they are aware, and a lot of times women are cut for men. So we kind of had this discussion with women, how they're cut for men, because it's a way to inhibit their sexual desires and, keep them pure until they're married. And so if they're being cut for men should know what's going on. And then it could be a voice to kind of say, no, don't get cut for us. This is not what we're trying to have happen. We should be here to help protect you and keep you safe and speak out against what is going on. And so we're not interviewing men now, actually, as we speak. We just finished up our round of interviews, and we interviewed faith leaders who are men. And we know that faith leaders, they have a voice. They can lead their congregations to make change and do things differently. And a lot of men we've spoken to that are faith leaders, they've come from countries that have high rates of FGM/C. What folks don't think about is that's happening right here as well in the US. They think it's like, oh, it's an over there problem, but it's happening here. I've met many women who have been cut right here in the US. So, now they're like, wow, it can happen. I left my country because I was afraid my daughters would get cut. Now I have to think about it happening here too in the US. And it pushes them more to become advocates and, try to talk about this, but they know it's a cultural practice too. And sometimes there's barriers like, how can I stop this from happening for generations and generations and generations? So what can I do to make a difference? So we've learned from men, their fears, very real fears, and trying to talk about this, and also sharing stories of their sisters have gone through, like Hatim has shared, and in detail, and how his sisters now are trying to navigate life as a survivor of FGM/C. And we also know the different names you can call it. Sometimes you don't want to call it FGM or FGC because it's not appropriate for the culture. So we learned that as well. But personally, like my perspective, I feel that men have a voice. And, after we're done with this research, we actually want to do something with you, like with Sahiyo and more, where we're having men become educators, and we're using research too to help bring the information they can use as they start this journey. So.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. That was really thoughtful. Tony, what do you have?
Thank you so much for that. Allow me to say that over time, we have seen FGM as a social norm, But I would like to say that FGM is not only a social norm, but also a gender norm. And for it being a gender norm, it simply means that we cannot be able to have solutions around FGM without involving the two genders, that is the men and the women. So we need to be able to have a discussion, a conversation around the whole issue of FGM as a societal issue that affects everyone. And once we start treating it as a gender norm, we will not see it, now the community will be able to understand, and everyone will be able to see the need to join the conversation and to be able to move together. Over the last few months, we have been able to train over 300 male champions across different parts of the country in Kenya and different communities. And what I would like to say is that I have seen instances whereby many of these men have no idea. This is what I want to say, no idea of what actually happens to women and girls in terms of FGM. They have completely no idea. By this, I mean, yes, they have had FGM is there. It's a cultural issue for them. They say it's a rite of passage. They understand it's something valuable as from the cultural perspective, but they have no idea of what is cut, what kind of harm is done to the women and girls, what happens in terms of their psychological effects, health effects, physical effects, and everything. So once we are able to have a conversation with them, then we are able to see real transformation in the sense that they are able to join in. We say we live in a patriarchal society, so we are able to use the power that they have in that society to ensure that we use it positively towards the fight against FGM.
And so, Tony, before we hear from you too, and so I do like, sorry, Tony, you touched on this really well, where you included some of the work that you've been doing, that those 300 male that you have trained, that is huge. So Jeremiah, if you want to include any like current work you're doing with men on the subject, please feel free to when you respond.
All right, thanks a lot, Murtaza. I have worked with Tony for quite some time, actually, in different forums, but also working with different people on the ground, as well as mostly on the media. I'm a journalist by profession, so I find myself in the spheres of the media. And I think one important thing is to be able to amplify the voice of those who are on the ground, because most of the people, including the communities that practice, often do not know that others in the same communities or tribes are practicing. And looking at friends who you go to class with, you often think that probably their families are not practicing it. As a boy, sometimes it's not involved. We are not very much involved. And I think it's really important for us to think about it in this way, because it's now against the law, at least here in Kenya. And with the activities that are going around, mostly we want to talk to the girls. But the truth is the boys who are going to marry these girls. It's the parents who are going to force these girls to be cut when they have them. So it's just important for us to think about that. So with my work right now, I work mostly with the media, and it's just rallying again the voices online, on social media, as well as on mainstream media to bring an end to FGM.
Thank you. And so this is kind of a follow-up to that. Feel free, anyone who, and Hatim, if you have any kind of, we'd love to hear from you if you have any kind of anything to input about what you've been working with and after the video, and see if you've been reaching out or like connecting with anyone too, what you found through your experience.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I don't think I've done as much as I could or as much as I should have, but you know, like the way I find myself being the most useful ally is just having conversations with my family members. Because I think like if I can, change the mind of one family member, maybe they can pass on that information to somebody else, right? And so, I had a conversation with my mom a few days ago about it, and I asked her like, have you brought it up to any of your friends? And she said, yeah, like I did bring it up to some of my friends, and they started thinking about it, and they had like discussions about it. And so I think just creating this sort of discourse within a community is really what I have kind of involved myself with. But it's more central to me and my family members. But I mean, with the hopes that it reaches further.
Right. No, I mean, and I think So if I can just speak a little bit about my experience too, where, I'm in a similar position where, I first learned about it. It's only been about 2 or 3 years where I've been, actually aware and active about it. More recently, within the last 1 year about. And so it's been very important to start on the ground level and have those conversations with the people you're closest to understand it. And they're difficult, like very difficult conversations to have, because you're forced to see your parents in a way that you might not want to, and then it's uncomfortable, right? But like Jeremiah, Khadijah, Tony have said that it is when you have to get rid of that kind of gender norm and educate the next generation so it's prevented, because it is a generational component to it, where because it's not happening and it's not made aware to men, it's passed over and it's allowed to continue. So I think that's really valuable. What you have to say, Hatim, to always start with the ground level and have those intimate conversations, I think, first with the people you're closest with, even though it's uncomfortable. Okay, so next question. So let's get to the challenges that we've faced. Everyone faces challenges in the field. We love to learn and grow from one another as best as we can. And so let's learn from things that have challenged us. And so open to everyone, whoever wants to jump in here, but what are some of the most difficult things you find while doing your work?
I've lost friends doing this work. So we do research, but also I've done events talking about FGM/C, talking about what it is. People don't even know that there are more like different types. They don't know that part of it. They don't know what it entails. And I've lost friends that feel that we shouldn't be talking about it, that it's okay to do. Some of them had it done themselves and they're fine with having had it done to themselves. They're fine with it. And they feel there's nothing wrong with it. And they feel by talking about it, going against, sometimes people lose part of their faith. So they feel like you're going against your faith talking about it. You're saying things you don't know what you're talking about. We're allowed to do this. And so I've gotten backlash on it. And it has been some emotional times, but I feel it's very important to talk about, because we should, our girls, happening to girls that they don't even have a say. A lot of them are babies, they can't say, I don't want this. So they haven't given their consent to even have this happen. And so I just think that, I've had that happen, but, it's still important to talk about it. And I think having you all here, I'm not a male, obviously, but I'm just so honored to be amongst you all, having men talk about it. Because a lot of times, like I said, women, a lot more cut for men. So men saying, no, this is not okay. And 300 men, I think you said, Jeremiah, that you have trained, that is amazing. And I think we need more training here. When I was interviewing men here, they said, but how do I get started? I don't even, I'm just afraid to talk about it, but I'll talk to my daughters about it. And hopefully that's a step right there, talking to your own daughters about it, let them know what it is and trying to find ways to protect them. And we have an imam here in Virginia, he's from Sudan, and he fought to get it become illegal in Sudan. And he's here talking about it here in the US. And so if we have more and more and more men step up and talk about this, I feel it can be a very, very powerful movement and impact.
On my part, this is Jeremiah. On my part, I think the biggest challenge is usually having the men to accept that it is a problem that's existing within the communities. And individually speaking, as a man, they would ask you, how do you know, or how does it matter to you? And to them, it's much more of a cultural traditional practice, most of the communities that I've worked within. Even in conversations on the media, still the same rhetoric sometimes. You get callers responding and saying, as a man, where does it come in? They don't see it literally. And I think changing that perspective is always a little bit difficult. But just taking it home, if you would want to have these conversations, and I always tell people, it's easier to speak outside your home compared to speaking inside your home, because how do you go and tell your mom, or having a conversation with your mom, whether she underwent it, and start that conversation from there. But it takes courage for all of us to face it, because it's an issue, and I don't just see it as as an issue that affects us, physically, but mostly economically, psychologically as well. Economically, because of course we all know that it's mostly a prerequisite for child marriage, and when the girl is cut at 9, 10, 11 years old, they are now deemed to be a woman, and then spirals up to become an issue that goes on with generations, because that girl definitely will not go to school. Probably if she does, maybe has to really fight for it, and it just spirals into other issues, and the family remains dependent on the man, mostly economically. So convincing the men mostly to see it beyond just the physical, beyond like the psychological. Sometimes you really have to make them see that by not like literally denying this girl to be a girl when she's supposed to be a girl, they are going to affect their family in future in terms of the economical side as well. So yeah.
No, thank you, Jeremiah. Thank you.
Well, for me, this is Tony. Mine has been like a whole journey because I started the fight against FGM back in the year 2013 after I got challenged by the refugees that I was working with and listening to the men sharing their stories about their encounters with FGM. And then I went online and thought that I could just start an online campaign dubbed #MenAndFGM to be able to challenge activists, challenge organizations, challenge everyone working around FGM to be able to have more men in the fight against FGM. And I will tell you the reception in back in 2013 was not that easy. I had a lot of backlash from so many people that right now we are great friends with, because some of them are renowned activists all over the world. And we always meet and laugh about this, because I would like to say that it was not easy to start a conversation around engagement of men and boys in the fight against FGM. Still, it's not a very popular topic. It's a very controversial issue. That's what I would like to say. And what we need to do is we need to open up and see how we can be able to have this conversation open up, because there are those who think that by the virtue of men being in power and us existing in a patriarchal society, then it's up to them to be able to advocate against FGM. But what I always tell people is that it's not automatic that because I am in this patriarchal society and I have the power, I am a politician or I am a religious leader, that it's automatic that I'll start having a conversation around FGM. If no one has come to me and sensitized me and made me understand the effects of FGM and why it needs to stop, then it becomes another issue. So that's a gap and a big challenge that has always existed there. And also another challenge also comes in terms of funding. We have seen right now it's fashionable, in quote, it's the big thing right now. Everyone is talking about the need to engage men and boys in the fight against FGM and other forms of sexual and gender-based violence. But when it comes to funding and ensuring that we have resources to be able to do this, people are just speaking. And we are not dedicating resources to be able to amplify these voices and to be able to reach to the communities and ensure that we have these conversations deep down in the communities. As I said earlier, we have been able to train over 300 champions within the last quarter or within the last 6 months. And what I've been challenging most of the people is that I challenge everyone who doubts that men are not key in this fight against FGM to come to Kenya. We will give them the sample because we have the list of people that we have been able to train for them to go and just do the research within those communities and see the impact those men are making, because you are able to see a real transformation happening, like a 360 turn once you engage these people from the known to the unknown. When you begin by having them explain to you why they believe that FGM is something that is important to them. So you begin from there, you listen to them, you pretend that you have no idea about the effects of FGM and everything. And then now you tell them, I have listened to you, you have told me why you believe FGM is something nice. Are you willing to listen to me to explain to you why we need to stop this? And then you have a conversation with them. And I have seen men shedding tears in these conversations, especially when they see the visual materials around what happens or the actual cutting that happens to women and girls. So we need to work around those challenges. And I believe we will be able to have more allies and ensure that we move together in this fight.
Sorry, let me just add something onto that, Murtaza, if you allow
Yeah,
me.
of course.
One important component, just following up to what Tonya said, is seeing FGM as an issue on itself. I know there are many, different issues of course, in Africa, in Asia as well, developing countries versus developed countries. One thing that I'd like to really point out is, if we focus on FGM as an issue by itself, rather than the people who are going to end it, then I think it's going to be easy for us to be able to engage more people meaningfully. So an issue, a challenge that I think I have experienced over time is we mostly focus on, of course, women-led organizations, but even as they work, they definitely have to work with men on the ground. So what I'm trying to say is it's important for us to look at FGM as an issue and try to look at it from whichever communities you are working in. So if it is a community that whose focus needs to debunk, for example, that FGM, quote unquote, is a religious requirement, then we go towards and try to focus on that. If you want to focus on empowering survivors to speak, then we focus on that. If you want to talk to elders and community leaders who are men, then we try to focus on that, because I think sometimes we lose out on opportunities when we have a very solid and when we have a stand that we definitely, I think we just need to be more flexible in working with these issues and work on them community by community, issue by issue, focusing on the issue, FGM itself.
Right. And so thank you, everyone. That last question was very insightful on what needs to be done, and some takeaways, like resources. That's always important, whatever you're working on. But if there are people who are doing the work and can benefit from those resources, I think that's an important thing that we need to address. And as well as making the issue the more prevalent thing, and how do we educate and approach it as a meaningful way, as Jeremiah put it, being flexible in approaching it. So kind of to wrap up here, last question for everyone. This is more your perspective to the audience. We have such a wide array of people here speaking, so love to hear your input on what are some things the audience could do to get involved and support the crucial work that we're doing, and even if they want to be involved with it, how can they support?
I can go first. So, if you're an audience member who, I guess, is a part of a community that practices, just have conversations about it. I mean, they don't even need to be, you're not going to change someone's mind overnight, right? Like that's impossible, but you can at least start talking about something that hasn't been talked about. And, I think by doing that, there's inevitably going to be a discussion about like the ethics of what's going on, and like the obvious negatives of what's happening as well, right? So but I think just opening the floor for a discussion, and doing it in a way that's not accusatory, and is just, I guess, more out of curiosity, right? Like for me, like when I asked my mom, like, why did she choose to get my sister cut, she it was obvious that it was a decision that was made, like our panelists have said, from it's because it's a gender norm, right? It's a cultural norm. It's not something that she really consciously thought about. And I think, when I asked her that, she broke down in tears, and she did regret doing it in the first place. So just, asking why it was done or why you had it done in a very like open manner, and letting, the person speak for themselves, and not, putting your own input, I think is like a really important way to just create, awareness about the issue.
Thanks, Hatim. Thanks. And so we do want to keep some time for questions because we're having some really great questions coming in the chat. And so we do want to hear from the rest of our panelists and then kind of open it up to some questions at the end.
I would say for Rahma Wise, the organization that I kind of lead, we have volunteers that have come in as of right now trying to get some more funding to do actual programs. We have volunteers that come in and do talk to their families. We actually have a conference coming up we're actually doing with Sahiyo, but it's focused more on women, focused on FGM/C and from cultural competent lens. Because we realize, like you said, Hatim, you can't go in there accusing people of things. They're going to turn you down quickly. Right. So you have to kind of go in, be able to have conversations and discuss like why it's happening, you know, understand that. And just keep having these combos. We did an interview 2 weeks ago with someone and they came in thinking it was okay. And like, oh, it's just a little cut. We had to explain the different types. And they were horrified when they left the interview. They didn't understand that it was this deep and what happens. So conversations is powerful. Share information is powerful because you can change someone's mind if you give them accurate information on what's going on. But and like I said before, a lot of people that I've known, they feel it's okay to have been cut. So you have to make sure you have to kind of be sensitive when having conversations and understanding where they're coming from. And then you navigate that. And what also we have done is have people who are from different communities you're trying to work with and that are trusted members of the community. And then they're able to go in and have discussions with their elders and with their family. But sometimes out of respect, they don't want to talk to the elders because like, I don't want to approach any elder because I want to be respectful. So it's like you have to figure out all these different layers and kind of find the best way to go about it. But we do have this toolkit that I mentioned in the chat that people go to on their own and find resources if they want to have a conversation. And very soon we'll have things there for men as well. And if you want to be part of Rahma and part of this of helping women and girls and men, you can also email me as well. So,
thank you, Khadijah.
For me, I would say that for the audience out there, especially if you're a man, I'm proud of you that you have taken the first step in joining this conversation. We hope that you will go out there and speak up around FGM. For the survivors and all other people who are listening to us, I would also like to say that everyone has a role to play in the fight against FGM. It's not one person's game. It's not a competition between men and women, men and boys on one side and women and girls on the other side. It's an issue that requires all of us to be able to move together and ensure that we end it. And then I will say that anyone who wishes to learn more about our work at Men and FGM, you can always be able to visit our website. You can always be able to see, especially I would like to encourage everyone to go and visit our YouTube channel, where you will be able to see many changes and testimonies of many men who we have been able to train over the last couple of years. You will listen to them, what they say, what happened to them, and why they have decided to join the fight against FGM. And you can always be able to reach out through the email addresses on our website, and we will be able to have conversations going forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tony.
On my part, I would just ask you to think about how you can contribute either on a personal level or on a professional level. Different communities understand or would relate to the issues that girls and women face when they undergo FGM. They will also relate to the effects that their families have. So if you're good, you know, if you're a doctor, let them explain to them as a doctor. Don't shy away because you feel like you're not an activist or a campaigner. Don't shy away because you feel like you can't speak to masses in a community baraza, or your voices, you're not a community leader in your community. You really can do that. So just go for it. It's nothing complicated. Just speak about it within the communities because different people are convinced differently. Second is just mobilize and meet up with your friends. Sometimes all you have to do is meet up with, we have different groupings, different groups in WhatsApp group. You can mobilize and decide to run and, you know, run a trend, a hashtag. That basically is going to reach someone who might not have been involved a lot. And finally, I would say use the media. I work with the Global Media Campaign, which basically rallies, which basically brings together campaigners and community influencers to to the media to speak about FGM. And one thing that I've seen over time is the more influential people speak on the media, more people are reached and conversations are started. Sometimes you might not end it that same day, but as long as there is a conversation, then ideas will be exchanged, knowledge will be, people will be more knowledgeable, and you will have helped a great deal in ending FGM. So whatever you do, do whatever you're, even if it's a small thing, just go for it, because you never know, you might end up saving at least one person's life.
Thank you, thank you. And so I just want to say thank you on, for myself, I've learned so much from your all's, unique perspectives and backgrounds. And thank you for being here and speaking with everyone today and answering some questions that will move us in the right direction. I do want to open it up now to some questions from the audience here. Let's see what we got.
Yeah, I can help. I think first up, we have a question from Miss Mariam Habibi, and I will help her come live now so that hopefully she can join us and ask her question live.
Great, great.
Hello, I hope I'm audible.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, thank you so much. So I really quickly want to ask, so I'm doing my research on the Maasai community and the Bora community. I'm doing comparative analysis right now, and I'm currently in Kenya. And so my research is mostly focused on sexual pleasure, desire, arousal, things like that. And so in my research, I mostly found that men are quite unaware of the practice, and they're quite ignorant about it for the most part. And they usually equate childbirth to pleasure. And so my question to Hatim for a follow-up question would be, what were the feelings of guilt, shame, fear that he felt as a brother after he realized what happened to his sister? And also, second part would just be, I want to ask how proactive are men as sexual partners in helping their women who are cut to sort of seek, achieve, redefine, and just explore notions of sexual desire, arousal, pleasure, and how do partners like work together in their intimate practices to address these notions and stigmas about sex, and sort of in essence how we can work this as a therapy experience for existing couples who are struggling with trying to define their sexual life, because I know a lot of women struggle with in their sexual practices. Sorry for the long question. I'm really sorry. Thank you so much.
So for the first part, yeah, I mean, I guess I did kind of feel ashamed, more so that I didn't know what happened. Like I hadn't, I never knew about it until I learned it from an outside source, and then I approached my sister and asked her about it, and I guess I always ask myself, had I known earlier, or well, there's really no way. My sister was cut when she was, I think, around she was a toddler. So, and we're only a year or 2 years apart. So there's no way I could have said anything. But, I mean, there are communities where girls are cut at later ages in their lives. And I'm sure other brothers probably feel a lot of shame when they do learn about the practice that, they couldn't have said something earlier. So, and I mean, the second part, I mean, I personally haven't had any sexual partners who have been cut, so that's not really, that's not like I guess an obstacle that I've had to kind of try and overcome or try to have a discussion about. So I can't really give a good answer about that.
We kind of interviewed some folks who have partners that, men who have partners that are survivors of FGM/C. We can't really share what the results are right now, but I think a lot of them have said, and just in general wise, is that it'd be great to have some resources to help them navigate that. It's very important because sometimes they don't even know until later when they're actually married. So having kind of resources to kind of help them navigate supporting a wife who might have undergone FGC would be very, very helpful.
Yeah, sorry. And I'll make it very short. Mariam, I know that you're doing the research among the Maasai community, which is my community. Yeah, I just wanted to point out that, you know, the different like sexuality is completely different oriented, or like how people talk about them probably will not talk within the husband and wife contexts, and probably people don't have these conversations. It's much more about the culture. Of course, you know this if you're doing the research already, but it's much more of the culture before realizing that they are going to get into trouble about, you know, their sexual life later when they are married. So just looking at that, I'm just thinking that it's nice for us to be able to think about the contexts that we are still passing the messages within these communities, because definitely there are some topics that, of course, you'll talk with the women, probably bring men and women together, but these are conversations that are normally not had in normal times. So it's nice for us to always think about what are the best approaches to these communities. How do the people feel about their sexual lives, and how free are they in talking about these issues? Because the fact that no one talks about them, or talks about them, you know, in hidden places or not in public, then makes it very difficult for people to know what the consequences could be. And it's a difficult topic even to talk about it even now in these campaigns. It's always a really heated topic on whether it affects you know, like the sexual life or not, despite it being either factual or I don't know what they say on the side. But I just think it's nice for us to think about how to approach these communities in a way that challenges their thinking, and, you know the truth before they get into it.
Well, I know we are approaching time, and I think, Khadijah, you might have to go. But for our other panelists, we have a few questions, and thank you so much to all of our participants for asking your questions. So if you guys are comfortable staying on for 10 more minutes, maybe we can have a couple more of our attendees ask questions. And to Khadijah, of course, if you have to leave, we know this is going over your time commitment. So just thank you so much for your amazing work. And it was so amazing to hear your perspective. And I don't know if you have any last words.
Well, thank you for having me. I did see a question about religion versus, I think it said culture. So I did want to mention that in regards to the work that we're doing with Rahma, a lot of times religion, people do push it as religious, but we actually had an imam kind of debunk that. We had an event with Mario, I think earlier this month on the 0 Day of Tolerance, where we kind of debunked that it is actually faith, our religious practice, and that, you know, is based on weak evidence that it is. So we had an imam here in VA called Imam Majid. He's very open about talking about this, and he really addressed this. And I think this is really good for faith communities to hear, because they understand that it's not a religious practice. Maybe it can help us get a closer step in kind of trying to do advocacy and help prevent FGC from happening to our women and girls. And also you'll find more of that information as well on the site. But thank you so much for having me. I do have another commitment. I'm so sorry I can't stay, but I appreciate it so much. And thank you so much to Jeremiah and Tony and Murtaza and Hatim and Catherine and Maria and everyone else at Sahiyo and Bahiyo for doing all this amazing work. Is really, really much needed. And everyone out there in the audience too doing this amazing work. So thank you.
Thanks, Khadijah. Thank you so much for being here with us. All right. Ooh.
And next up, I think we have Miss Severina. So I'm going to promote her to come live and ask her question as well.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Catherine.
Hello.
Can you hear me? Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much for having me. And I just want to commend Tony and Kipainoi for their good work that they're doing back at home. And I've known them for some time doing an amazing work, and they have not tired, and they've like continued to do that. and just sensitizing the communities and just helping men to be aware of the effect of FGM. So I'm really glad that they're here to, try to talk to us on men involvement in FGC and ending FGM. And so my is there a backlash between religion, traditions, and the law? Because right now, I know in Kenya, we have a law that prohibits female genital mutilation. But then on the other hand, we have traditions that are so concrete in our communities. And then on the other hand, we have also communities that believe that FGM is a religion act. So how are they dealing with this, with those three aspects as men, trying to end FGM in Kenya right now? Thank you.
All right, should I go, Tony?
Sure.
All right, so Sabrina, I think, thank you very much first for joining us today. I think the most crucial part is for us to be able to identify this according to the practicing community. As you've said rightfully, different communities practice FGM for different reasons or with different beliefs. And as you've said, it plays a big role in terms of how culture was passed on to, like how traditions were passed on from one generation to one another. And rightfully said as well, marked rites of passages to from one level to another one, marked the roles within each community. So for example, in the Maasai, it's distinctive between what the roles of a girl is and what the roles of a woman are. So it's nice for us to think about how to approach this community in a way according to what FGM means to them, and see if you could get an alternative to that without really destroying the good part of their culture. So you can really say we have one answer to everything. We have the law, of course. The law prohibits FGM. These communities are practicing FGM, and people have different reasons, from curses to feeling like they have to do what their parents told them to do, among other reasons. So I think it's nice for us to think about ways within which we could work with the community hand in hand, because if they don't own it, it's going to be really difficult. We can't always be there all the time. It's always nice for us to have the community own it, see why it's not okay to do it. And I'm sure that once they see why it's not supposed to be done, then they'll find better alternatives to their existing traditions, and I'm pretty sure that we'll be able to to sustain it in the long run.
Thank you.
Well, just to join in and add something small quickly, allow me to say that from experience, the easiest thing that has been in most of our trainings to explain is law and culture or tradition, in the sense that if you're sitting down with the elders and all these people, they are the custodians of the culture. So simply, it's like they make the laws themselves within that context. So once you are able to show them the effects of FGM and transform them and make them able to reason with you and see why they need to change those laws, because the difference between the laws at the national level and the acts and what have you, it's that the parliamentarians sit down in the national parliament and they pass these laws. But at the community level, the elders sit down under a tree and make the laws. That is the culture itself. So once you're able to explain to them why this is an harmful cultural practice and why they need to join the conversation, then you simply ask them to sit down in their informal sitting where they normally sit down to deliberate around culture, to slaughter a goat and have that conversation and change the laws that govern issues to do with FGM. So it's very easy to link that between the national law and the constitution and what happens within the culture. When it comes to religion, that is a bit tricky, because it depends. In most of the communities, you find out that in the Muslim communities where we have done the trainings, there's always a gap. If there is no one to demystify issues surrounding religion and to tell the community that it's not a religious issue, then people will go with religion. But once you get a sheikh and someone who is able to challenge them and tell them it's not in the Quran, this is what the Holy Book says, then they go back to culture. So you have now to find a way of ensuring that you tackle these two together. You're tackling the cultural aspects of FGM, and at the same time ensure that when you're going to these societies which allude to FGM as a religious requirement, you have someone also to counter the religion. Because if you go with one narrative around religion, then they will shift back to culture. If you go and talk about culture only, then they will shift you back to religion. So it's always nice to understand that when you're dealing with those two, with communities that believe FGM is a religious issue, you have to be holistic in your approach and ensure that you don't leave either of the two hanging. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, thank you so much. And I just wanted to add a small, aspect on the ladies' question, who is doing research back at home about the Maasai community and their sexuality. As Kipainoi said, it's very true that women, the Maasai women and most traditional women back at home, in our culture, we don't talk about sexual reproductive health or any sexuality aspect when we are young. Actually, they only tell you that you'll have the cut and that's it. They don't even tell you where they're supposed to be cut. They don't even tell you what the aftermath will be. So it's a very tricky question. As Kipainoi said, you'll just have to get a way of talking to a young Maasai woman or a girl so that they can be able to open up on their sexuality. Otherwise, it is not in their conversation. It's not a conversation that is done like on a round table every day. So it's a bit tricky, but everything that these young men are doing, it's incredible. And God bless you, Tony and Kipainoi. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we have time for one more question. And so I think we have Tracy Greenwood, who I will promote to panelist, and she can ask her question live as well.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hello, we can hear you. Thank you so much.
Right, I've changed my question a little bit from my original one because I've just been, I'm just fascinated by everyone else's questions. I'm in my final year of a degree and I've decided to do my thesis on FGM. From the research that I've done so far, I find for the most part, men are actually unaware of the physical and psychological implications of FGM, and also mostly unaware of actually what happens to the girls. And I do realise that many men in contemporary society are opposed to the practice. So I'm not sort of going down the feminist route and sort of being rude to anyone. But my thesis is going down the route of how does patriarchy, well, my original question was, in relation to patriarchy, what extent would you say that patriarchal attitudes underpin the practice? Or would you say it's more tradition than patriarchy? So I think it's like patriarchal attitudes are ingrained in societies, obviously in Western societies as well as in, rural African societies. And I think it's like an intergenerational transmission of these attitudes that are underpinning the practice. I don't know what are your thoughts on that?
I kind of have something to say there. So yeah, no, I if it comes down to like cultural and tradition, I think it's a mixture of both. Like the religion drives the culture drives religion. Like kind of what Tony was saying is when you have to sit down and have that conversation, that's their counter argument, right? And so you're always trying to navigate that. I feel that, I was raised in a community that practiced this, and it happened to my sisters. And so that's my experience with it. And I think that the patternistic kind of view of that is wasn't that much involved in it. It was more the tradition of it being done by the women in the family that was perpetuated and like kind of kept to the side while men were aware it was happening, but they weren't ever like kind of given any more information other than, oh, it has to be done through this age, right? And so that was my experience with it, but I guess my perspective on that question.
Thank you.
Well, allow me to say that without sounding like I'm trying to find the right way to put this, allow me to say that we need to understand that patriarchy is a system that has existed, and yes, I understand it's something that that continues some of these harmful cultural practices and also other forms of sexual and gender-based violence, in the sense that men are seen as being superior to women and everything. But this is what we need to start asking ourselves in this discussion right now. We have a deadline to end FGM that is everyone is talking about 2030 when you're supposed to have the global goals. But no one has come up with a deadline to end patriarchy. So it simply means that patriarchy is going to take more time, because it's something that is so deep, to the extent that if you came to my community, for example, and said that now land ownership will be for women, you will be stoned. That is the reality. So what we need to do is come up with means of ending FGM within this patriarchal society that we have. Because the moment we forget the bigger picture as FGM and start attacking the elephant in the room, which is patriarchy, then we might lose focus when it comes to ending FGM. So I'm not saying that we ignore patriarchy, but what I'm saying is we find a way of dealing with FGM within this patriarchal system, and then continue addressing patriarchy as we are doing so. That will be my one pence advice.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. Yeah, thank you for that.
I'd probably be looping into what Tony was just said. For instance, the traditional practices that mark the rites of passage for men were done separately from what from the women as well. So if it's circumcision, men are circumcised differently at a different time or even location with the women in different ways and with different types of ceremonies. And so you see these are really deeply ingrained and structured, deeply structured way of doing things over the centuries and over the years. So there is actually not just within the FGM campaign, but even as we speak now, there is a lot of conflict and people trying to figure out, now that we have education coming in, and it's of course changing different things. People do not know exactly what to hold on and what to let go. So I think with time, as just Tony's put it, we need to focus on the bad issues and the issues that are affecting us as we continue to address other issues. Of course, our constitution in Kenya, for example, allows for advocates for people to own land, everyone to own land, of course, and everyone has the right to own land. But of course, these systems are ingrained, and you find that people still do not follow or do not really advocate for some of this because probably there is no movement behind it, or it's not just strong. So you often find yourself alone if you want to advocate for something. So I think it's going to be a process that's going to take lots of time. But it definitely, with education especially, we are going to get somewhere in the coming years. But let's address the issues that are affecting especially the girls, because definitely we are finding it affecting our communities and derailing development, both economically as a nation as well as individually. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So I know we are kind of approaching the end of our time today. So I don't want to take too much of your guys' time as panelists, and I really want to thank you for your effort and your time in joining us. And I didn't know if you guys had any last words to say before we end our webinar today.
Well, I will go maybe first. Allow me to say that thank you so much for this opportunity, and to everyone who is listening and everyone who is interested in ending FGM. Mine will just be to say that we need to understand and insist on this. We need to understand that the fight against FGM-C is not a competition between women and girls on one side and men and boys on the other side. It is a social norm, it's a gender norm, it's something that needs us all to move together and unite together and end FGM. Thank you.
All right, for me, I would just like to end by saying we can do a lot in our communities, but we can also amplify this work and reach more. So if you know a journalist, if you know a reporter, whoever, please, if there is a story you'd like to amplify, of course, taking care of the survivors and any delicate issues, but I think there is a potential of reaching more and more and more people if we expand these messages to our communities, giving out positive messages as well, showing that girls don't have to be cut to be someone meaningful in the community or someone who's listened to in the community. So if you can, please amplify that message. Let as many people as possible, with whichever medium you are using, let as many people as possible hear the good stories, and I'm sure we're going to end FGM faster.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for having me as a panelist, and thanks for everyone for attending and I guess listening to my spiel. And like final words, I guess, yeah, just don't be afraid to talk about something, because it's difficult, right? That itself is that's probably one of the biggest obstacles, I think, within the issue itself, right? Because the conversations are so hard to have. But if we don't have the conversation in the first place, then how can we ensure change? So, don't be afraid to speak up, because you never know, who that's going to reach and, who you might save from the practice itself.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again to all of our panelists. Thank you, a very, very big thank you to Sahiyo and their team that put this together, Kate, Maria, Lara, and they do amazing work to organize these events and get everyone here in one place in one time. And so please support the work that they're doing, because then you'd be supporting the work that we're all doing. And just thank you. I mean, I've learned so much, and thank you for joining us.
Alrighty, thank you again so much. And to our participants today, we'll typically be sending out an email where you can find the links to all the amazing organizations that have been mentioned today. And I know we've been getting a lot of questions, so we'll try to answer those questions in that email too. And thank you everyone so much for an amazing webinar. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.